I'll go with it. Let's do get started. I'll just call the meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda for tonight is the projected revenue for fiscal. Nobody from the public had anything tonight. Okay. So, Madam Manager, I think they're trying to sell me extended warranty again. Okay, let's go with it there.
Mr. Mayor and Board, what we'd like to spend some time going over is where our projected revenue forecasting has gotten us to this point for fiscal year 17, 18. So just kind of want to go over some line items with you. We've worked today to try and be able to compare apples to apples. So the first line of figures I want to kind of go over with you is what we had budgeted for the current year in which we're in, which would be 16-17, and then what we're projecting for the new budget year for 17-18. And we'll go over if that's an increase or decrease. So to get us started, the way our general fund is set up, the first revenue line item you have is second prior year tax. For this current year, we were budgeted $2,500. For the next budget year, we're suggesting $3,000, which would be a $500 increase. And if you have questions at any time, just stop me, because I'm just going to go through this.
We don't have that, do we?
No, ma'am.
All we got's debts, see that?
Yeah, the bad news. Your interest was budgeted at $6,000. Next year, we're requesting the same at $6,000, so that should remain as is. Your first prior year tax for this year was $25,000. We're suggesting that it'll be $25,000 next year. The next biggest line item that I want to bring your attention to is your current tax year. So you were budgeted $1,831,000. We're only projecting that you're going to collect $1,788,976. That's a $42,000 decrease. And to go over that, I've passed out, and then I have it, if we want to look further into it, of what's making up that shortfall. You had senior exemptions, which is an age exemption. That was $23,913.99 that had to come off the books. You had your tax deferred with the agriculture and timber exemption. That accounted for $13,755.06. And then the last exemption was based on the partially outside the city limits, which was $2,778.93. So that brings you the total that we're suggesting that you're probably going to end up with a decrease overall of about $42,000. So something to bring to the board's attention.
The old age, the senior though, and the agricultural were all in place, right? They've been in place for years.
Those have been, yes. This is just what comes off.
Well, why would we not have already built those numbers in? Those ones that
This is just for this upcoming year, though, what the difference is going to be.
But
Why is it more?
Yeah.
You've had more
Addition
exemptions.
of what's already been there.
Yes.
So there's more old people?
It would appear so, yes, ma'am.
We're all getting older?
How big is that?
Okay.
Can I be exempt?
You certainly try.
That's an
Probably been
No
less than
levity,
10
I'm
years
sorry.
of exemptions.
Okay, your fourth and earlier prior year tax, we were budgeted at $1,000. This year we're suggesting the same at $1,000 collection. Your third prior year tax was budgeted at $500, and we're suggesting you will collect the same at $500. The one that's a little bit different this year is your motor vehicle tax. In previous years, it's been lumped together that includes your rental tax. And last year that accounted for $116,000. This year in total, between your motor vehicle and your rental tax, will be $120,000. So you'll see a slight increase from there. Previously, you saw it all mixed together. Kyra and I have broken it down to where you can actually see it a little bit further. So your motor vehicle tax will be $100,000. And then when we scoot down to the next line item, you're going to see rental vehicle tax at $20,000. Okay? Local sales option. Last year was budgeted at $640,000. We're suggesting the same at $640,000. Your local business registration fee, and to point this out, this is what replaced the privilege license tax that we were once able to collect for $39,000. Last year, we're only able now to collect based on a registration fee, and last year we budgeted $2,400. So we're suggesting this year you might get $3,000 because there has been a little bit of an increase. Okay, the cable franchise tax last year was budgeted at $2,200. We don't expect to get this anymore. Kyra has called and spoken with Mediacom, and the cable franchise tax is they no longer have to pay this to your municipalities. So you'll lose the, it's not a lot, but when it's in the big scheme of things, $2,200 that we'll no longer be able to collect. Your local occupancy tax administration fee, this comes out of your room occupancy tax to basically help with administration of going over with the TDA's financials. That was budgeted at $2,500 for this current year. We're suggesting the same at $2,500 for next year. And then again, just to point out, the vehicle rental tax, well, now you'll see when we get to actual hard numbers, it'll be a separate line item at $20,000. Your PAL bill is suggested, last year it was $125,000. This year it's suggested at the same based on league predictions at $125,000. One thing a little bit different is a beer and wine excess tax. And how that was being accounted for before was being lumped into some of your ABC funds, and we'll go over that in just a moment. But this year, you'll actually, in a separate line item, you're going to gain $17,500 for this beer and wine excess tax.
Is that excess?
Mm-hmm.
Excess.
Yeah.
I just want to make that clear.
All right, court costs were budgeted at $1,000. This year, we're suggesting the same at $1,000. Your franchise tax last year was $440,600. This year, we're suggesting you're going to see an increase based on league predictions. We have that at $450,000, which is a $9,400 increase from previous year.
What was that again?
The franchise tax. Your zoning permits last year were budgeted at $4,000. You're going to probably see a decrease based on projections of what we've looked at revenue. We're budgeting around $2,500, so that'd be about a $1,500 decrease. Sign permits were budgeted at $1,000 last year. We're suggesting the same at $1,000 for this upcoming year. Investment earnings were budgeted at $1,000 last year. We're suggesting $1,500 this year, so that's a $500 increase. Your special events, we have budgeted $5,000 last year. We're suggesting $5,000 again for this year. Your rents last year were budgeted at $25,500. This year we're suggesting an increase to $30,500. That's an increase of $5,000, and that's up slightly because of the Lazy Hiker lease agreement. This upcoming fiscal year, they'll be paying the town a little bit more. The sale of equipment, last year we budgeted $5,000 because we had several in-house computers, laptops, printers to sell. This year, after speaking with office staff, we don't really have that much to surplus, so we're looking at only budgeting around $500, so that's a $4,500 decrease. Your ABC law enforcement funds, last year $5,000 was budgeted. We're suggesting the same for this upcoming year at $5,000. The ABC store profit, last year was budgeted at $70,000. We're suggesting the same for this year at $70,000 based on current revenue projections. Now, the miscellaneous was one other item we want to bring to your attention, and Kyra, feel free to jump in at any time. Last year, we had budgeted $22,500, and this has been kind of an ongoing process of where administration and finance has tried to look at what true revenues are. And after following it, if you'll remember last year, we did the same in your water and sewer. There was a significant amount of revenue accounted for in your water and sewer fund when it shouldn't have necessarily been accounted that way. So Kyra and I have followed this particular line item in your general fund for a year now. And in previous years, it was budgeted at $22,500. Realistically, it should only be about $1,000. What was accounting for that was employees' withholdings and deductions, because that's not a true revenue. It should have been probably rolled out at the end of each year, but it had not been before. So we would like to clean that up this year.
And also the sales tax, the local option sales tax would come in, and it would be accounted for in miscellaneous revenue for recording, which is, it's okay to do that, but it needs to be reclassed to the receivable. So the back of this, it did not get reclassed a lot of times. So we're pulling that out of there, so that you can see that.
So you'll see a decrease in that line item by $21,500, but that's a true picture of what needs to be in there now. Okay. Your NC Bike and Pedestrian Grant, we budgeted $9,378. We will not budget anything this year because that's completed, so that's going to kind of wash itself out. Your lease purchase proceeds, we budgeted $161,445. What that incurred last year was part of your finance software that we did. That's going to roll over to your debt service, so you'll see it on an expenditure end now. And then we had leased one police vehicle, which we paid off this current year, so this is going to wash itself as well. The transfer in is budgeted last year at $84,500. This year we're suggesting the same, and what that is, that's basically a contribution from the water and sewer fund and the fire fund to help with your payroll, the services that this board, office staff help between the other funds, and we're suggesting the same for this upcoming year. And then the final thing with your PAL bill that you have in your fund balance PAL bill, we budgeted $450,000 last year. We're suggesting you keep that the same because it's about the same number. So your main question to me is going to be, where does this leave us? So I broke it down a step further. And if you're looking at what your revenue, and I can get copies of these, if you don't know that you have copies of these. For 16-17, your revenue was $3,869,200. For 17-18, it will be $3,834,976. So let me tell you kind of where some of the increases, and we'll kind of work ourselves back. So for increases for this proposed budget year, your second year taxes increased by around $500. Your business registration increased around $600. The beer and wine tax went up to $17,500. Your franchise tax went up to $9,400. Investment earnings went up $500, and your rents increased $5,000. So total increases were $33,500. However, to balance it back down to the decreases we can expect, your current year taxes decreased $42,024. Your cable franchise, since it's no longer available to charge, is $2,200. Zoning permits decreased by $1,500. Sale of equipment decreased by $4,500, and then the miscellaneous line item decreased by $21,500. So your decreases accounted for $71,724. So overall, the decrease and the increase for this proposed upcoming budget year, you'll have a shortfall of $34,224. And one positive of good news that we've been following is it does appear, though, that you will not end up having to anticipate the use of fund balance to budget your current budget for this year. So that's good news. Questions on the general side of where we are? Okay. The next revenue source that we can look at is your water and sewer enterprise fund. Okay. So as we're aware, we're looking at the current water plant upgrade and expansion project, hoping to have bids out at the end of this month. So it'll hopefully be something to present to the board for an award process at your May board meeting. But kind of to look at where we are with your taps and connections, and where Kyra and I and other office staff have looked about your revenue sources. For your enterprise fund, water and sewer, taps and connections budgeted this year that we're in was $50,550. We're suggesting this upcoming year only around $25,550. And the reason why is when we went into this budget last year, we knew that there would be some new development, which has occurred. We don't know of, because you had Ingalls, you had your Silo Road apartments. We knew that when we were going in, that there would be some TAP fees. However, with this upcoming year, we're not aware of any. We certainly are sure there hopefully will be some, so that is why we decreased it back down to where it should be. Your reconnection fees were budgeted at $15,000 last year. We're suggesting the same at $15,000 this year. Availability fees were budgeted at $12,000 last year. We're suggesting the same for this upcoming year. Your dumping fees were budgeted at $60,000 for this year. We're suggesting the same for the upcoming year. Macon County, basically what that is, Macon County, and we can go over this more when we get to the expenditure side a little bit later on, is where Macon County has agreed to pay a half-person salary in exchange for the town treating their leachate pond. So last year they contributed to the town $36,171. We're probably going to see a little bit of an increase there to around $38,000. So that's a $1,108 increase. Your investment earnings were budgeted at $1,000 for this current year. We're suggesting maybe bumping that up to around $1,500. So that's a little bit, about a $500 increase. Your sale of materials and assets, we have surplus several of our trucks that needed to be repaired. There was also, I think, some office equipment at Public Works that we surplus. So we had suggested for this current budget, we budgeted $5,337. But for the next upcoming budget, we're only going to propose to the board $1,500 because we're not aware of any large items that we need to surplus at this time. Miscellaneous was budgeted at $3,500. We're suggesting around, for this upcoming year, $2,000, so that's a $1,500 decrease. And then, of course, we're continuing to look at your utility fees. So I hope that kind of gives you, your water and sewer fund overall is looking very healthy, and I don't see any red flags that the board should be concerned about at this time. Questions? Kyra, Ms. Foster, would you like to add anything?
No, as far as revenues for this year, we're pretty much on target where we need to be at the end of March. We should be at like 75%, and both funds were well at that, so as far as this year.
Summer, when you did the enterprise fund, and you were doing the projected revenues in general fund, you kind of gave us totals of 16 and 17. What are you projecting on the enterprise for the 17?
For 17, 18?
Mm-hmm.
Well, right now, for what we're looking at collection, your collection rate where we should be is at 75%.
Mm-hmm. And
depending on the line item, I can give that to you. What you're wanting, if you want a total, you're looking at projected
total.
Gotcha. $3,791,796.
Okay,
That help you? You're very welcome. Other questions or comments on those particular line items?
Sounds good. All right, let's move on to debt service. Is that where we are now?
Yes, sir.
Debt service.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and Board, you have two handouts in front of you. The one looks at the payments of principal and interest for the upcoming budget year. And then the second one is total debt by the town. So what we can look at, we've broken it down into three categories. You've got your water and sewer debt. You've got a state revolving loan debt in water and sewer. You have your Bank of America debt, your SunTrust, and then the most recent one will be your water plant upgrade and expansion. So the total debt that the town of Franklin will have in their water and sewer fund for this upcoming fiscal year will be $12,420,471.82. On the general side of debt, you have your SunTrust, which is basically the debt on all the properties and buildings that we have in town, including the one that we're currently in today. Your diversified, that is the financing package that the town decided to move forward with the new software upgrade. So your total debt for general is $1,142,349.65. In fire, you had your Integra Fire with Integra Bank. We refinanced some of the fire trucks, and the total debt still owed on your fire trucks is $223,699.57. So to combine all three funds, kind of what does the total debt look like for the town of Franklin? It's $13,786,521.04.
Any questions, comments?
What are they set to pay out?
Sorry.
I think your Sun Trust, I did write that down, let me find the notes on that. One of them's in 2024, I think one's in 2025, and one's in 2033. The Sun Trust is June of 2024.
Just a second now, are you talking about the Sun Trust being the 1.7 million or the 1 million?
It's both. It's both in the water and the sewer,
Okay,
and general is the Sun Trust, because it's a split.
okay.
So both Sun Trusts will pay out in June of 2024.
Your fire will pay out fiscal year 1920. So the last payment on that will be June of 2020.
And then your Bank of America will pay out in June of 2025. And then the state revolving, the one that we have been making payments on currently, not the water treatment plant, but the other one will pay out in May of 2033. That's $351.
Any other questions? All right, Madam Manager, I think we'll move on now to the discussion on the proposed budget for fiscal year 2017 and 2018.
And this is for yourself and the board. Feedback to office staff here.
All right, I'll start, Mr. McMahon.
No questions or comments this time. I want to thank Summer and Kyra and the gang for all the work they've done.
Ms. McRae. Any suggestions or any questions you have, let's bring them up. If you have
I'll
some.
probably think of them.
We'll
couple of
we'll be
days,
here
you know
for
what
a
I
few
mean.
minutes, yeah.
You don't have the proposed expenditures, that's what we're supposed to do.
Your proposed expenditures will be presented, because we're still meeting with your departments. Those will be presented to the board at your normal May 1st meeting as normal.
Even though we have a little less revenue, are you seeing any problems meeting, wherever we are right now, if it continued next year?
It is something to be cautious about. So for some of your one-time expenditures, when we first started this budget, we have proposed probably going to maybe have to possibly dip in your fund balance of $123,000. But they were for one-time expenditures. However, by being diligent and trying, department heads being cautious of their spending, it looks as though hopefully, even though we had budgeted that your fund balance would decrease by $123,000, at this point it looks as though you would not have to dip into your fund balance. So there's pros and cons. I guess that's where I was going with that.
What are some of the numbers on our fund balances?
Do you want, okay, we had audits last week, and your fund balance changes daily.
Get you close.
Get you close, okay. If you wanted to look in your general side with what the board stripping away all your restrictions to your unrestricted fund balance, you've probably got, and you can kick me under the table if I'm wrong, around 655,000 that you could have direct access to,
And then other than that, there's the PAL bill, fund balance,
of 450,000.
and then other than that, PAL bill and the restricted.
In fire department, you probably, after the payment of this year, we looked the other day, you probably around 41,000 in your fund balance in fire that you'll have left after their payment in June. As far as water and sewer, that one's a little bit harder one to calculate, but based on what we've looked at before, around unrestricted around 3 million.
For those of us who've been around for a long time, we've seen times when we probably didn't have enough manpower, and we've seen times when we really had too much manpower. And manpower is one of the most expensive items that we have to go with all of the residual payments. I want you as manager to be very aware and alert as to if you can see opportunities of merging responsibilities and all where we could end up being. My folks, my mama side always had restaurants that said you never could make any money unless you was one person short. I said that was your profit, that one person that you worked around. And we're not in the business of making profit for the town. I understand that. We've got to have the capacity to get the job done. But it obviously has been a shuffling when we can see it without having to go into names and times. But if there is any way to really make a dent on what we pay plus the insurance plus retirement, it would be if we could end up, and I want you to see if it's there.
Yes, sir,
You
we
know,
can do that.
Mr. Maxwell?
Can I have another question?
Oh, yes, ma'am, go right ahead.
Since you mentioned that, how do the health insurance costs look for the coming year?
Not well. We,
Oh, well.
administrative staff has been meeting with our insurance carriers. It's kind of a hard time just because they don't really release their premiums till when we're halfway through the budget. But based on conversations, there will be anywhere from an 8 to 10% increase.
Is there anything that we can do to gain control of it?
That's the $1 million question.
We'll be lucky because this talk around the state that some insurance is going up 30% premiums.
Back to insurance real quick though, that was health insurance. As far as property insurance and your workers' comp, those numbers look as though they'll be the same as this current year.
Any other big items we can't control? Can't easily control.
When is the lazy hiker, when is their option come due on the purchase?
Right, starting July of 2017, they have the option to purchase.
And that is open-ended for how long?
10 years.
You sure have been busy lately.
Mr. Maxwell, do you have a question? Any comment? There are two things that I'm not advocating them necessarily, but possible increasing revenues would be, I think we're still eligible for a half-cent sales tax increase. Are we not? Through the
You
legislature,
could
the
be,
local
yes, sir.
option.
There are a lot of local options.
And then
yes, sir.
there's a lot of talk about 6% instead of 3% on the room occupancy taxes.
Could we use that for anything?
This is what we're trying to get through the legislature right now, is that towns and counties are really lobbying, I guess that's not a bad word, are lobbying the legislature to give towns and counties more freedom in how to use the revenues from the room occupancy taxes. One being infrastructure and upgrades to the things that make us attractive to the tourists, to to the vistas. So that is one of the league's primary goals in the legislature this year, is letting towns have more control of how TDA funds are spent.
How aggressive have we been on our little garden spot on East Main Street that we acquired? Is it listed for sale? On the right, going down?
Yeah, I know where you're at, yes, sir. We've been in discussions with, and I need to get our town attorney to circle back on that. We did have it listed probably 2 years ago. It's still just kind of sitting vacant, so it might be, this would be a great time to be a little bit more aggressive with that.
When we had it listed, I mean, do we have an idea of what it might bring to the market?
The market at the time was suggested at $124,000, and we did receive some informal bids, and I believe the board rejected them at that time because it was very, very low.
Other than the big pie that's got with my property in that case, do we have other assets of that nature that are floating around that may come fall off the tree finally?
Well, that's an excellent question, and office staff and Kyra, kudos to you, because I know you spend a significant amount of time. Our auditors basically asked us a very similar question, Mr. Collins, and Ms. Doster has spent a significant amount of time looking at all the town's assets, and those are really your two biggest ones that you alluded to, that you might have somewhere to go with. So much of the assets that are tied into the town of Franklin are with lift stations, pump houses, little, yeah.
No assets on paper, maybe.
Yes, sir.
So you show them we're not getting as much money, and then you're saying that we can equalize it out without dipping into the fund balance. How you do that?
That's this year's budget.
That's this, yeah. Thank you,
I
Mr.
see.
Murray, yes.
All right, I'm with you.
Okay, anybody have anything else? If not,
We appreciate the board for your patience and allowing us to go
So
through
what's our
this.
schedule? What's next?
Next will be at your May 1st meeting. We will present you with the full budget so we can start looking at expenditures. And then we also have another budget work session date set for, I believe it's Monday, May the 15th at 5:30 here in this boardroom.
Have you had any luck getting up with that, UN?
School of Government?
Yes.
no.
She seemed really helpful at first with the emails trying to, secure a conference call, but she's just kind of faded back. So maybe we can get a different contact I'm hoping for.
Stacy might be able to help.
I'll reach out to
Because
Stacy.
apparently this master's program, he's been working with them, so he may have a contact there.
I'll see Stacy Wednesday, so I'll reach out. Thank you for
Because
that.
I'd like to really, it'd be nice to really get something done.
No, it would be.
Find out how much it might cost us to really get something done.
Might want to look at those funding account. All right, anybody have anything else? Okay, I will certainly entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move,
Do we have a second? All in favor? Okay.
and thank you for